the costumes.
In just a moment, the guide will be here. He'll take you on a tour around Hellerslev. And when you leave here, bring your lunch, because you will not come back to this room until actually in the afternoon.
That was a great performance last night. You all smiled. That's wonderful. Now, that has to be your worst performance. So everything now has to be so much better.
One of the things that some of the people, they've never seen anything like that before, they say, "Oh man, is that lively?" Because it's the kind of, like you say, in Denmark we call it folk dance. The kind of thing, it's very, very different from what you see. Some of you have seen Danish folk dance groups. So the kind of things that you do is very different. Them seeing a group like you, your age, doing that kind of dance is impressive. Probably on his way in, I'll see what he is. This is Kim, and I've asked specifically for an English-speaking guide, because I thought it would be easier for you than him doing it in English and in Danish. And,
we can do it in Spanish as well, if that
okay. That's, I don't know.
German, French. So yeah, you already told me that my name is Kim. I'm the guide here, or one of the guides here in the city, and you're about to go on a tour around the old part of the city of Hellerslev, which the concept of a city is fairly new to Denmark. The Vikings didn't know about cities, but the concept of a city came up to Denmark, came to Scandinavia from Germany, from the southern part of Europe, and the cities were founded around 1100 to 1200. This city was founded around 1150, which makes it one of the oldest cities in Denmark. But let's go outside and take a walk. It's beautiful weather.
Right. I got you.
Yeah.
So we are standing here outside the limits of the old medieval city. The old city found further on from the last ice age. As the ice was melting, it brought gravel and stone and sand with it towards the sea. And here it left a hill of sand. On this hill of sand, the city of Hellerslev was founded. You have to remember, from 1866, after a war, 1864, then from 1866 to 1920, actually to 1918, we have been under German rule. After a people's referendum in 1920, March 1920, February 1920, sorry, the southern part of Denmark was reunited with the Kingdom of Denmark. And in the high season, up to 5,000 pieces of cattle were driven through the city at night. So you can imagine that this street was one of the very, very, very dirty streets in the Middle Ages. The only thing that could take care of this garbage was actually two things. Rain, that's why people were so happy to build cities on a hill. In all European cities in the medieval times, there were pigs eating whatever they could find in the streets. And there are many examples from medieval times that a pig was biting small children. In the Middle Ages, in medieval times, we were Catholics, and in Catholic understanding at that time, a pig, any animal, was a creation by God just like man was, and therefore it had a soul like man had, and was also responsible for its actions. So when a pig did something like that, a pig was prosecuted like a man would be prosecuted. So this pig was drawn to the courthouse and accused for murder, and there was a judge and a DA and yeah, everything there, jury, and usually the pig ended up by being hanged at the gallows. So this, cattle and horses were traded here. Now today, this is our marketplace where weekly market takes place, where you can buy your vegetables and cheeses and everything. With the cathedral behind us, this cathedral is one of the youngest cathedrals in Denmark. It became first a cathedral officially in the year 1922, after the reunification with Denmark. But in the Middle Ages, this was a collegiate church of the cathedral in Schleswig, which meant it had a huge degree of independence. Among other things, it had the allowance to educate teachers and priests.
Yeah.
Yes?
What's the difference between a church and a cathedral?
The cathedral is a church that is administratively over a lot of other churches. The cathedral is the church of the bishop, and the bishop is the head of church in a diocese in a certain area. Then you have an archbishop and so on. But then with the Reformation, it all changes. We all only have bishops, and the bishops are independent from each other. We have no Archbishop of Denmark. Cool. Sure that we are standing on the northern side of the church. Now I'll tell you something about how to recognize the northern side of churches in Europe, if it's an old church in a city. You have to remember, the northern side of a church has always been the side of the graveyard. In medieval times, where there was a graveyard, everything here on this graveyard was ordered the way society was ordered. So the poorest people, they laid farthest away, and the richest people, they were of course closest to the church. And if the family paid a little extra money to the diggers, they would see to that the head and maybe also the shoulder would get in under the foundation of the church. Because that way they would get the daily blessing from the church and maybe not spend so many years in purgatory like they maybe would. And you will see that in any old city church in Europe, the northern sides always will show cracks. And that's because of the corpses under the foundation. You know the expression of, I think in America you know the expression to be stinking rich. Yes. That actually comes from that time where the really rich people could pay the way to be buried inside the church, under the floor. So people that were visiting the church, going to church, were always saying the stinking rich, because the rich people were stinking there. The first church that was built here was built around 1150 when the city was founded. Of course, the city always had to have a church, and was built on the highest place on this sand hill. Now, happily for the city, this church burned about 100 years after it was built, because it was a small church built in granite stones like this, and it was just too small. I mean, a king city had to have something very nice and beautiful, so happily it burned. So we could build another and a bigger church. And then we went to France and got inspired by the French way of building church in brickstone in the form of a Latin cross. Now that was modern, that was nice. We started building it and we're nearly finished with it. Then we said it's not big enough, it's not nice enough, it's not glorious enough. So we went out again, this time to the city of Lübeck, one of the richest cities in all of Europe. And they built churches totally different, and that was very, very modern, and oh, we wanted something like that. So this cross church was rebuilt to be a hall church. Then we said, it's not big enough, it's not nice enough, we have to have something more glorious. So we went to France again and got inspired by the cathedrals of northern France. And that was fairly easy because the middle nave was raised to a higher height as the two side naves, and voila, we got a high Gothic church. You will see the whole thing, don't worry. All lighting here is white, and it has transparent glass. And that's the original from the medieval times. We also got new benches, which are replications of Renaissance benches, like we find them in Nyborg on the island of Fyn. There's nothing in the interior here which is originally older than 1627, because the interior of the church burned up. So the church interior is very much Baroque. And one of the nicest examples you can find in the epitaphium there, hanging there. Now this is a 2-in-1 picture, so if you move with me over to the other side, the picture will change. You have to stand around here to see it. It will change the picture of the resurrection. The second thing is, iconographically, this is wrong. Because it should be the way that when you enter the church, you should see the crucifixion. And if you leave the church, you should see the resurrection. So actually, it should hang over on the other side. But there's no space there. So it has been hanging there for hundreds and hundreds of years. Here we also find the oldest interior. This is the baptismal font from 1480 around. Now what people don't think about is the kind of water people were using at that time. It was holy water in Catholic times. holy water is something you don't throw away, so it just keeps in there all the time. And you can imagine that over time you got the World Conference of Bacteria there, and you drop a little child after 3 days after maybe a very, very hard work. Now here we are in a Berryman chapel of a very rich family, the family Simonsen. The coffins that were in here, they were lowered under the ground, so that's why the ground is a little bit wavy, so they're still here. So this is now the regimental chapel of the Foot Infantry Regiment of Schleswig, which doesn't exist anymore. But there's still a tradition in the city that every Friday at 12 o'clock, soldiers march from the barracks up here through the city. A soldier will walk in here and turn a page in this book. This book is a register of all the fallen of the regiment, of the Schleswig Infantry Regiment, from its founding in 1600 and, oh, don't ask me when, I forgot that, until its dissolvement in 2005. The last one that is in here is one from 2002 who fell in Kosovo, in former Yugoslavia. This tunnel. Now this tunnel we have because of a mistake in the construction, a false construction of the church. Now remember, the church was church number 3 on this place, and the roads were already existing at that time. So as church number 3 was built, it could not be built bigger out that way because there was this road already, Nørke. If you have been in other cathedrals around Europe, you will remember maybe that usually you would be able to move on here around the whole. Now why was that? That is because in Catholic liturgy at that time it was important that the priest could go in procession inside the church as well as outside the church. They had to do that 3 times a day now, but they had to get around the altar. So that's why they had this tunnel, so they could move around the church in procession. Today we use the procession tunnel to exhibit the claws of the bishop. And it was designed by Her Majesty the Queen. It was not made by her like many people think, but it was designed by her. So we move towards it, and then we meet on the other side. Here, maybe you can see that this is a head carved into the stone. This shows that this cornerstone actually has been a cornerstone in the first church at this place, built around 1150. People were afraid of that the old gods would come during the night and destroy what was built during the day. So to prevent them from doing so, the cornerstones were always with these heads to scare the old gods, the evil powers which they have become now, away. You will see that there has been a window here at one time. That was actually the mercy of medieval times. The people that weren't allowed to go into the church, that weren't allowed to go to Mass because they had some kind of disease, they collected here and were following Mass on the inside of this chapel. And what was more important, they got the Holy Eucharisty out here, the bread. Just move on through, there's space now. You're allowed into the middle as well. Now remember, there will be a written test afterwards. This house here was built by a man called Philip of Neuss. Neuss is a city in Germany. Now remember that in Europe, in Northern Europe, you had to be taxes and fees to the city by means of how broad a side your house was having to the main street. So it was a sort of balance you had to accomplish between, on the one side, as narrow a house as possible to save as much money as possible, but also a little bit wider to brag to the neighbor that you had enough money to pay taxes and fees. Now, all of this area here was run down, it was slum, right up until the 1960s, 1970s. In 1968, it was decided to demolish the whole of the old part of the city because it was beyond saving. We didn't want it at that time. So preparations were made to demolish this house here in 1968, and behind 7 layers of wallpaper, they found paintings on wooden panels. And people from the National Museum were coming down here looking at it, and they said, stop, you are not allowed to demolish this house. This is so unique, this has to be saved. So that actually was the start of the saving campaign of restoring this old part of the city. And today we are of course very happy to that it went that way. In there, this is a museum for ceramics and faience. I have an agreement with them that we are allowed up into the room where they found this panel painting, so you can see them. Just have to go in there. Now it's incomplete, the panel paintings would have gone all the way around, starting over there with a scene showing a child being born. The next picture would have shown the child in the cradle. Then we see this wall here with the two pictures still there, shows the child playing with his toys. We see here a toy horse, and there, what is it, a bow or something? Last thing is a photo here which shows the house around 1900, but this also would show the house like it looked like around 1970, where they started restoring it. Up to 10 families were living in this house at the same time, even in the cellar. So it was really the slum area, the ghetto area of the city. And now look at the house from this side. One wouldn't expect an old half-timbered house behind this facade. And that's how houses are most here in Hellerslev. But a lot of these houses are just houses that hide something much older behind the facade. The high staircase up to the main door, and you see over the main door the two dogs. I will comment the two dogs later on. But remember that the dogs are looking out.
What's that guy doing?
There's a lot of water underneath the city, and it's pressured up through the sand hill, and the sand hill, of course, filters the water, so the water you see coming out here is pure drinking water quality. It's very refreshing. It's 5 degrees Celsius all year round. So I always used to drink here. And if they were open for business, and now I put this now close to the end, and I did that out of experience with American tour groups, because young American guys, they always use the rest of the tour for searching for those places. But if you turn around, you can see the yellow house.
I know.
Pay a lot of money to live actually, but I think that's all over the world now the same. That
And the Berea Valley.
And here we see the park, the Dam Park, which is the city park, and this is actually where I am to deliver you to your lunch break. A little bit further down that way. Goodbye, and thank you for following me around here.
Appreciate it.
It was nice.
I'm going to take you to the place, and then we'll let everyone loose. And because I think it's better to go. So, what we're going to do now is I'm going to take you past the place where you're going to perform later this afternoon, and then a little further up, and then we will split you up into groups.
It's electric. Yeah. It's not supposed to be an electric bass guitar. It's an electric upright bass.
What's going on here? Yeah, something like that. You don't say anything, but it's saying. What is that sign? Is that like
No dumping
rocks? You're moving rocks from one pile to another.
You're a rock.
I'm not a rock.
At least maybe hold the fiddle while I bow or something. No, you bow, I'll hold the fiddle.
I don't think it's going to be pretty either way.
Yeah, no.
Hey dancers, come up here a minute. Be aware there's a stone out
Drainage.
here
Oh.
and up here. So be aware of that.
Yep, I'm gonna die. I trip over everything.
Hallie, what did I just say?
There's rocks missing there. There.
Y'all need to see that and be aware. Don't be constantly looking down. Just try to make your circle big enough to be on the outside of it.
Somebody falls. Somebody has to replace it.
Yeah, we don't want any turned ankles or anything. If you're out, watch. Someone could turn their ankle and someone has to run into it. All right, line up for big set.
Oh no,
Back there. Big set.
Pizza.
6 or 8.
Hey, I got, no.
Gotcha.